Let me ask you a question. How many of you feel like you're doing everything you're supposed to do when it comes to money? You're working hard, you're putting in some overtime, you're saving when you can save, you're paying debts down when you can pay them down, you're really doing everything you've been taught, but yet it just seems like you're not getting ahead. If that's the case, this video is for you. Because in this video, what I want to do is I want to challenge your beliefs around how money works. That's the biggest thing you need to address. The belief, the habits that you have created in your life when it comes to money. And we're gonna tear them apart, but we're gonna rebuild the framework that it takes to be successful financially. And it doesn't involve you making more money, you getting better opportunities, or any of that. It involves you changing how you think about money. Let's dive in and let's create your framework. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how two people can make about the same amount of money, live in the same town, go through the same economy, deal with the same inflation, yet 20 years later, one of them has built real wealth, while the other one feels like they're still playing catch up? So how does that happen? Because if making more money was the answer, every single doctor out there would be wealthy. Every single professional athlete would retire rich and remain rich. Every lottery winner, well, they'd remain rich as well. But we know that's not how it works. You see, we've seen people make millions and lose every bit of it. And then we've seen other people who have never made millions of dollars quietly build incredible wealth over a period of time. So what's the difference? Because it isn't just the money. Well, after spending more than 30 years in the financial world and working on Wall Street, building multiple businesses, investing in lots of real estate, and helping thousands of families, I've come to believe it isn't your income. It isn't your intelligence either. And it certainly isn't that some people had better opportunities than other people, because that's what everybody wants to say. Oh, they got lucky. I think the difference starts long before money ever hits a bank account. It starts with the way you think about money. That's where the difference is. Because once you understand that, you're never going to look at your financial life the same way again. Now, let me ask you another question. Who actually taught you how money works? Think about that for a second. Who taught you about money? I'm not talking about balancing a checkbook. I'm not talking about making a budget. I'm actually talking about how money actually works, how wealth gets built, how the banks make money, how the wealthy think differently. Who taught you all of that? Well, you already know the answer. For most people, nobody. Nobody. You see, you weren't taught that. We observed. We watched our parents, we watched our family members, we watched the people around us, we watched television, we watched the news, we watched people struggle. If you're anything like me, that's what I watched. I watched my mom struggle, my dad struggle. We even watched some people succeed. And without realizing it, we started to adopt their beliefs. Things like, you've got to go to work and you got to work hard to get money. Okay, that's one thing. How about debt is just part of life? We've come to believe that. The bank is the safest place to put your money. Rich people, oh, they just got lucky. You got to save more money. You got to hope the market does better. That all sounds really familiar, doesn't it? But here's the interesting part. Most of us never stopped to ask whether those ideas were actually true. We just accepted them. We just accepted them to be true. Not because we proved them to be true, not because we studied them, simply because that's what we've always heard. And after we start hearing that for long enough, it starts feeling like fact, whether it is or it isn't. I want to try something with you. I want to try something that I've never done. And I'm going to ask you a few questions. So don't overthink them, but put the comments down below. Just pay attention to your very first answer that pops in your head. You ready? Okay. If someone handed you $100,000 today, what would you do with it? Comment below. Would you pay off debt? Would you put it in the bank? Would you invest it? Would you spend some of it just to have a good time and make memories? Now here's the real question. Why was that your answer? Where did it come from? Let me ask you another one. Someone tells you this, I quit my job and I started a business. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Oh man, that's risky. Or was it good for them? I wish I could do that. Maybe you're thinking something like, oh, they're probably gonna fail. Is that what you thought? Again, where'd that answer come from? All right, we're gonna do one more and I want you to definitely comment below on this one. Someone introduces you to a financial strategy that you've never heard about before. What's your first reaction to that? Ah, that'll never work. Or is it, tell me more about that. Or is it something like, I need to look into that, which you typically don't after you say that. Did you notice what just happened? Every one of those answers showed up instantly. You didn't just grab a calculator, you didn't go do research, you didn't weigh in on the pros and the cons. Your mind just went somewhere immediately because of pre-programming. That's why. Because long before you ever make a financial decision, we develop financial habits. Let me repeat that. We develop habits, financial beliefs, ways of thinking that become automatic that shape how we look at money, how we actually look at risk, how we look at an opportunity. And ultimately, they shape the decisions that we make, which is exactly why I believe your financial future has a lot less to do with your paycheck and a lot more about how you've been conditioned to think about money. So if all that is true, which I believe it is, then what we've got to do is we've got to answer one question, and that question is why? Why do two people hear the exact same information, but yet one of those people sees an opportunity while the other one sees risk? Why does one person get really excited while the other person immediately says, oh, that'll never work? I don't think that's an accident, folks. I think it all starts right here. This is what I call your financial operating system. And whether you realize it or not, every single financial decision you make runs through it. That's the truth. You see, most people are focused down here. I want to make more money. I want to get out of debt. I want financial freedom. But what does that even mean? I want to retire. What does retirement look like? Those are all great goals, but that's not where results begin, because results come from the actions you take. Your actions come from a decision you make. Your decision comes from a question you ask, and the questions you ask are driven by what you already believe. Think about that for just 1 second. This is good, and you need to think about this, because if you believe opportunities are everywhere, then you're going to ask completely different questions than somebody who believes opportunities are rare. Same exact situation, different beliefs, different questions, different decisions, which means different results. You see, I don't think wealthy people necessarily have the answers. I really don't. I think they just ask better questions. And when you ask better questions, you tend to make better decisions. And over time, those better decisions produce completely different results. Now, over the years, I've come to notice something. And this is really important, so pay attention. Whether I'm speaking on stage, sitting down with a client, or just having a conversation with people, they usually respond to a new financial idea in one of three ways. The first person shuts it down immediately. That'll never work. Sounds too good to be true. I've heard that before. Okay, now don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with being skeptical. I'm skeptical all the time. And I think healthy skepticism asks questions. It does the research for you. If you want to understand something, but there's a big difference between skepticism and simply dismantling something. Let me clarify that. Because if you dismantle something, it's because it's unfamiliar and your body goes to a natural, safe place. The second person finds it interesting. They'll more than likely watch the videos required to learn more about it. Maybe they'll read a book, take a few notes and write things down. That's a really important thing. When you're reading, take notes. Tell a friend about it. I always do that. I always repeat what I learned. But then life happens, Monday rolls around, work gets busy, the kids need something, you all know how that works, and before you know it, nothing changes. You see, information by itself doesn't change your life. Action is what changes your life. And there's a third person, okay? Let's talk about this third person. And this is the person that I love working with. You see, they're curious. Not because they believe everything they hear, and definitely not because they're gullible, but because they're curious. Because they're willing to investigate before making up their mind. You see, they ask questions, they do their research, they challenge what they think they already know, and then, and only then, they make a decision. Which of those three people do you think is most likely to change their financial future? Not the one who believes everything, not the one who rejects everything. It's probably the one who is willing to investigate before making a decision, right? Would you agree with that? Because if you really think about it, those three choices show up in every single situation and every single time you're introduced to something new. Every single time. So let me give you a personal example. Years ago, someone introduced me to a financial concept that I'd never heard about before. And honestly, I'm being honest, and you probably have heard this before. My first reaction wasn't, wow, tell me more. It was, no way. I'm an advisor. That doesn't work that way. That's not how money works. I've been in finance, all this crap that I went over. I know better than that. I thought I knew what I didn't know. And maybe you've been there before. You see, sometimes the hardest thing to overcome isn't what we don't know, it's what we think we know that just ain't so. Because instead of walking away, I got curious. I started asking questions, more because of the person I was with. I started reading and I watched a video and I started doing the research after that. And honestly, I was trying to prove this person wrong because I thought I knew what I didn't know. I was simply trying to prove someone wrong. I figured if it didn't hold up, I'd just move on. But the more I dug in, and literally digging in was one 90-minute video, the more I realized something. Everything that I thought I knew was based on what I've been taught, not necessarily what was true. And that was the turning point for me. Because some of the biggest financial breakthroughs I've ever had didn't come from me finding some hidden secret. They came from being willing to ask questions and to question the beliefs that I carried around for years. And ever since then, that's exactly how I've approached every new financial idea. Not with blind belief, definitely not. Not with automatic rejection, although sometimes my body wants to do that, but with curiosity, because curiosity made me far more money than any other solution. Now, this brings us to two words that get thrown around all the time: scarcity and abundance. And honestly, I think most people misunderstand what they really mean. You see, people think that scarcity is about having less money, and I don't believe that at all. You see, I've met people worth millions of dollars who still live in a scarcity mindset. They're the worst kind of people to be around. And I've also met people with very little who live in a complete abundant mindset. They have everything they need. So it has nothing to do with your bank account. Scarcity is believing that there's never enough, there's never enough money, there's never enough opportunity, there's never enough time, never enough success. So every decision you make comes from fear. You play defense. Your nervous system only knows that defense. You hesitate, you wait, you convince yourself, maybe next year, maybe someday, maybe when it's better timing. Does this sound familiar? Now let's talk about abundance. Abundance isn't pretending everything is going to work out. Abundance is not spending more money that you don't have, and it's definitely not trying to look rich, although some do. Real abundance is simply believing that value can always be created, that problems can always be solved, that opportunities don't just happen. You see, opportunities are built. You see, scarcity asks, what if I lose? Abundance asks, what if it works? These are two completely different questions, and depending on which one of those two you're asking, you're probably going to have two completely different decisions. Scarcity is always trying to protect what it has. Abundance is always looking for ways to create more value, and that is a completely different way to look at money. You see, if you come at money from an abundant standpoint, that there's always more money, you're going to win in life. So what finally changed everything for me? I ask that question all the time. It wasn't making more money. It wasn't finding a better investment. It wasn't working harder, although I've always worked hard. It was changing what I was chasing. You see, for years, like most people, I thought the goal was to chase money. And that is exactly what I did for all of those years. And then one day I realized money has never been the goal. Value is. Think about every dollar that you've ever earned. Every single dollar. Someone paid it to you because you solved a problem, right? You solved a problem for them. Maybe you built something, maybe you fixed something, maybe you sold something, maybe you taught something, maybe you led a team, whatever it is, you created value first. You solved the problem first. Then money showed up second. See, you can't get fire without putting the logs in first. You see, money always follows value. And that's why people who solve the biggest problems usually make, well, the most amount of money. It's simple. The business owners, the entrepreneurs, the inventors, they're constantly looking for ways to create more value, ways to solve more problems. And when they do, the money just follows. It just shows up. It's kind of like disrupting a river. you can disrupt the flow of money by solving a problem. So I stopped asking, how do I make more money? And I started asking, how do I become more valuable? Because if I'm becoming more valuable, the income usually takes care of itself. That single shift changed the way I looked at business, the way I looked at investing, and really the way I looked at life. Now, if this way of thinking is new to you, stick with me because I get it. It doesn't just snap and all of a sudden change. Because now we're gonna take that idea, okay? We're gonna take that idea we just talked about, and I'm gonna show you exactly how to apply it in building real wealth. Take one more look at this because I honestly believe this is why two people can start in almost the exact same place and end up living two completely different financial lives. One being successful, one feeling like they're always catching up. And it's not because of luck. Not because one made a bigger paycheck. Definitely not because one had all the opportunities. It's because every financial decision started right here at what they believed. You see, most people spend their entire lives trying to fix the bottom of the equation. I need to make more money. I need to get out of debt. I need to retire. I want to retire. I want financial freedom. You know, listen, I get it. Everybody does. Those are all great, but nothing changes at the top. Don't expect much to change at the bottom because your beliefs determine the questions you ask. The questions determine the decisions you make. The decisions determine your actions. And over time, those actions become your results. That's why so many people find themselves repeating the same financial patterns. You've seen it in your life, I'm sure. They're just different numbers. A bigger paycheck doesn't automatically make somebody wealthy. We've seen it all the time. People making six figures living paycheck to paycheck, literally nothing. And they're making six figures, multiple six figures. A great investment won't fix a bad financial habit. You'll just keep following the same pattern. And history has shown us that the winning lottery ticket doesn't solve the problem either. Because if the way you think about money doesn't change, the results don't change for very long. The money comes in and then it goes right back to its original source. The money changes, the mindset doesn't. And eventually the money follows the mindset, always, 100% of the time. So here's my challenge to you. Over the next week, don't worry about making more money. Don't spend your time looking for the next investment. Instead, what I want you to pay attention to is how you think about money. The next time you make a financial decision, pause for a second and ask yourself, why did I think that? Where did that belief come from? Did I figure that out for myself, or have I just believed that that's how things are? Because that's how they've always been. So was the decision based on facts or was it based on fear? Those are two very different things. You see, most people never stop long enough to ask those questions. They just react. They just react, and that's how we go through life. And when you keep reacting the same way, you usually keep getting the same results. But the moment you're in right now, I want you to become aware of that. The moment you start questioning the beliefs that have been driving your financial decisions, that's when things begin to change. Because before your finances ever change, your thinking has to change first. And once that happens, once your thinking changes, everything else starts to follow. Remember how we started today? I asked you how two different people with similar incomes, living in the same economy, can end up in two completely different financial situations. Hopefully you see it a little differently now. And it isn't just about the income, it isn't about being smarter, and it definitely isn't about luck. For crying out loud, get rid of that word. And it isn't about one person getting all the opportunities. We would call that luck just the same. It's because they see opportunities differently. You see, one person hears something new and immediately says that will never work, while the other one says that's interesting, let me learn more, and they continue to ask and challenge the question. One protects what they already believe, the other is willing to challenge it and potentially change it. Now think about what happens when those two people make hundreds, even thousands of financial decisions over the course of their lives. Do you think they'll end up in the same place? Absolutely not. Not because they started differently, but because they thought differently. And over time, those thoughts become decisions and those thoughts become things. Those decisions become the habits, and those habits become that person's financial future. That's why I believe if you want different financial results, it all starts with you thinking differently. Steve Jobs said that, right? Think differently. And that's where you need to begin today. You know, people ask me all the time, Chris, what's the best investment? What should I invest my money in? And typically I won't even answer that. But they'll also ask, what's the best strategy? What's the best way to build wealth? And you know, honestly, when I hear those questions, I think they're all good questions, but I think there's a better one. What belief about money have I never stopped to question? That's a good question. That's a really good question, because that one question might completely change the direction of your financial life. Now, I'm not asking you to believe everything you hear. In fact, I hope you don't. But I do hope you ask questions. I hope that you do your own research. I hope that you challenge what you've always believed. And I hope you include the things that I've shared with you today, because that's exactly what I did. That's it. And it changed my life. I'm Chris Naugle. Thanks for spending a couple minutes with me today to talk about how you can think differently about money. And I've got another video that I think would be really helpful. Remember I mentioned that 90-minute video earlier on? Well, that video will change the way you think about money. So check this video out right here, The Secrets of the Rich. I'll see you on the next one.